There's an old country song from Aaron Tippin that says, "You gotta stand for something or you'll fall for anything." And I'm afraid we've reached a place in our world, like the whole big giant mud ball third rock from the sun, where we've fallen for anything. I mean, like anything for the next 10 minutes or so. And that's what I want to talk about in this episode of Leading Leaders. Stay tuned. Bring a pen.
Master the story power method to captivate your audience, improve workplace culture, and 10x your fundraising.
Scan the QR code to book your first coaching call or visit storypowercoach.com.
Real quick reminder, Narrative Warrior Kingdom cohort. We're in our first go around right now. 18 weeks from now, we will have our first graduates. Narrative warriors ready to combat the lies that are going on in our culture and our society and have a story that answers the challenge. Are you in?
Subscribe now for access to our extensive media library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom. Begin your personal growth plan at storypoweracademy.com for leadership development and communication skills training.
I'm J. Lauren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast, and it amazes me how often people will tell you about their convictions on Monday, and on Wednesday, they don't live up to those convictions. I heard someone say recently, very recently, a particular group of people, two different opposing worldviews, two different opposing ideas, that this group of people really holds to their ideas even when they disagree with each other. And this other group of people are so individualistic in their ideas that they will fight each other over ideas, and as a group, they get stomped on a regular basis, especially when pit against another group. Now, maybe you know which two groups I'm talking about, because it has, well, literally global implications, societal implications, political implications, life and death implications, implications about your farmland, the food on your table, the stuff you put in your body, whether it's through your shampoo or through your shower water or through some let me not get sick thing that you decide to put under your skin. But see, there's a dynamic in the argument that would solve the problem for a lot of people, hundreds of millions of people, perhaps billions of people. And the problem that I see is that there are way too many humans on the planet who have never asked the question intentionally and taken the time and the effort, the emotional effort, the financial effort, the concentration effort to answer the question. The question is, do I really believe what I say I believe? If you have strongly held convictions, or as Simon Sinek says it, I have really strong opinions, loosely held. Please, for a moment, agree with me that convictions and opinions are not the same thing. Convictions and opinions should not possess the same weight of decision-making factor in your life. Opinions and decisions, that's a crazy mix. If I'm of an opinion today, but that opinion can change, I shouldn't be making major life-based decisions on that, life-changing decisions for myself, life-altering decisions perhaps for other people. I shouldn't be making those on opinions that I believe are strong today, but loosely held. They could change tomorrow. Prove me wrong, and I will admit that I'm wrong. But I shouldn't be making significant life-altering decisions based on those things. The challenge for a lot of society is they've never taken the time to think through what are those fundamentals in my life that I make decisions about. Now, I call them core values. Some people call them principles. They're very closely related. They are not the same. Again, they're like opinions and convictions. See, here's the difference between a core value and a principle. A principle is much more akin to a universal law. a universal law like gravity, like, what do they call it? It's the law of sowing and reaping. If you plant a cherry seed, you don't get banana trees. Why? Because there's no bananas in a cherry seed. They're just not there. It doesn't matter what you do to try to alter that cherry seed, bananas is not going to be the result. When you understand that principle doesn't care about your opinion. That principle doesn't care about your conviction. Oh, it's called the law of gender. Sorry, missed that one. Boy, that's an irony, isn't it? The law of gender is what tells you that a cherry pit doesn't make a banana tree. I'll let you noodle on that one. But see, that principle, that law of gender is immutable. It doesn't care what you think of it. It doesn't perform differently for one group of people than does it for another group of people. Principles, laws of the universe, if you will, they don't care about your political persuasion, your religious background. They don't care at all. But see, the unshakable blueprint that we need in our lives is to build a system of core values that are the driving force behind the decisions that we make. And the closer those core values are to the principles, the laws of the universe, the more foundational they become. They're not just fundamental at that point. They're like the dirt and the rock that sits on the bedrock before you pour the foundation. Before you lay the concrete slab, there's a platform. You've got to build all that in there. In England, before they even start the first upright portion of a structure, I hope this is still true today. In 1993, I had a friend who had actually built his own house. Just before I left, he showed me some of the plans and what it took to go through. It took him almost 3 years to get the approval of the foundation of his house, because the law where he built his house, just between Bury St. Edmunds and Lakenheath, I'll just give it that, in that area, in Sussex, in that area, the law required that his foundation be able to withstand the movement, the changes, the rotation of the earth for 200 years before he could put the first upright on it. Before he could build a door jamb, build a door frame, they had to inspect and certify that the foundation of the house would last 200 years. In Texas, there are homes that are less than 10 years old that are already getting foundation repair. Why? Because Texas soil moves. We have extreme heats. I think we're in day 50-something of zero moisture falling from the sky onto us. If you look at the satellite images of the last 2 or 3 weeks, what you see is clouds all the way around Texas and none right here where we live. What does that mean? Well, it means the soil dries up. I walked across a pasture yesterday with enough dry cracks in the ground you could stick your hand into the dirt between the blades of grass, probably all the way up to your palm. That's how dry the ground is. When the ground is dry, it contracts. When that happens under your house, the whole foundation of your house moves. See, when you're built on laws and principles, they should be like that 200-year foundation, not that 6-inch concrete slab. It really, really matters how you build what you're building. And if you're not building it, if you're not looking at how long is it going to stand, how long is it going to last, what could it withstand? All right, we drove along the beach in Florida, very much like the beaches in Texas and the beaches in Louisiana and the beaches in Alabama. When you drive along the beach, you see houses that are up on stilts. I don't look at those stilts and go, wow, that's a whole lot stronger foundation than the concrete slab. I don't look at that stilt and go, well, that's, that it looks prettier, because now you have a patio kind of underneath and a place to park your cars in the shade, and its brilliance. No, I look at that shadow and I realize up there on those stilts, it wasn't about the shade. It wasn't about the shadow. It wasn't about the patio. It wasn't about a place to park your cars. They put it up on stilts because sometimes the storm surge pushes enough water onto the beach that those houses on the beach would be like an overflowed bathtub if they weren't on stilts. Now, you've got to know that when you build a house there. Building a 200-year lasting foundation may be brilliant, but your house is going to be like an overflowed bathtub if you do that on the ground. By the way, try to build a foundation like that on a sandy beach, probably not so easy. I don't know how far down they put those giant telephone pole stilt-looking things that they build those houses on, but I can imagine it's pretty substantial. They've got to get way down deep into the sand, because if you've been on a beach, you can stand still, and literally when the little bitty surf comes in, not even enough for a minnow to swim in, you'll watch the sand under your feet leave, and then come back and bury your feet, and then leave again. You can't build a house like that. You got to get way down deep to the core. Oh, maybe that's where they mean core values should be. I believe so. I'm convinced that core values are one of the most important fundamental aspects of building any business, building any life, building any relationship. Now, I'm not going to tell you what your core values ought to be. As a coach, as a mentor, I will be delighted to sit down with you and hash it out until, like that inspector inspecting your foundation, you feel confident it's going to last 200 years. You can get that check mark next to it and go, I don't know about the door frame. I'm not convinced the windows can last through a tornado, but that foundation is going nowhere. For the next 200 years, at a minimum, I can come back to the same spot and build again, because it's going to last whatever happens. If you listen to some of these, I think his name is James, who does the Hard Knocks, the School of Hard Knocks, where he interviews millionaires and billionaires. Smart move, by the way. Kid's barely 25 years old. He's younger than any of my kids. And he's worth tens of millions because he asks good questions. He's built his business around that. People have invested in it. One of the Logan brothers, I think it was Jake, recently and offered to invest in 20% of his company. Major amounts of money in his little interview. Well, this young man builds relationships, and he asks people often, have you ever been broke? What's the most amount of money you've made in a year? What's the most amount of money you've made in the shortest period of time? If you died tomorrow, what's the one thing you'd want to leave behind? Those are really solid questions. But see, when you ask that question of hundreds of people, and you begin to find that all of them who are in the top 3 to 5% earners on the planet answer those questions the same. Yes, I've been broke. I refused to quit. I held on to my faith. I kept starting over. I pivoted to something new, but I kept being me. Let me give you an idea. Those are what we call core values, foundational values. Foundational values aligned with the principles, the laws of the universe. When you have these ambiguous opinions that change today, or they change, scariest thought, based on what someone in the room said today that sounded important. I have no problem getting pushback. When I say something and somebody's like, well, I'm not sure that I agree with that or that I believe that like you do. Awesome. And I mean that seriously. Ask any of my coaching clients. I got no problem being corrected. I got no problem being told, what if you thought about it this way? I'm not easily persuaded, but I am absolutely committed to learning. And I'm absolutely committed to getting as deep in the truth as I can. I don't want the pillars holding up my house or the foundation under my house cracking every time the ground moves, every time the wind blows, every time the sand changes. I don't want my life being moved around like that. I want my life to be steady and stable. I want to dig down to the deepest thing I can get my hands on, the most practical, simplified, common denominator of the power of life. And the closer I can get to the bedrock, to the core meaning of life, to the purpose of life, the stronger I believe my foundation will be. And what holds it there? Core values. My first core value is faith. My faith in Jesus Christ, that he is the Messiah, that the Bible is the best evidence we have to that, and that there are a whole lot of historians who have looked into him and have not been able to disprove what he said of himself. That's pretty good evidence to me. Now, I can also tell you that because of my faith, there are things that I abandon quickly. There are things that, as an idea, as a relationship, as a business opportunity, my understanding of my faith, my commitment to my understanding of my faith my research, my development, my involvement, my, I hope, improvement in my own personal life, the being that I am. All of those things cause me sometimes to look at a relationship and go, no, thank you. Offers of sales, of checks, of business development opportunities, and my answer is no, thank you. Because in my understanding, they violate that core principle of my faith and my relationship with Jesus Christ, which I believe, I'm not telling you have to believe this, I believe I have sufficient evidence in my own life and my own experiences to say what's happening on this planet right now is like, it's gone, it's over, it's a vapor. It's in an instant, in a flash, it's done. I was just watching with my wife a message from a friend of ours whose husband passed in the backyard. Wasn't a major car accident, he wasn't at war, he wasn't doing anything else, but he's gone. And in her words, because of what I do, we are prepared. In fact, any extra money that you would have thought you would have sent to us, don't worry about it. We've got that part of it taken care of, but feel free to send it to our church. My friends, that's a core value. That's a principle. They're friends of ours, partly because of the circles we run in, friends of ours because we have the same core value. Our faith is primary. Our belief that Jesus Christ died on the cross, rose again, and he's coming back one day to rule and reign over all mankind and to take those who are his to heaven for eternity. Not for a minute, not for a lunch break, but for eternity. That's a pretty significant core value. Now, I can tell you, I know that there are families who have been divided over that belief system. Husbands and wives who parted ways, fathers and children who parted ways, generational gaps. I have a friend, a mentor to me, an advisor to me, used to be a boss to me, who when he confessed his faith in Jesus Christ, his family cut him off. At one time was told, you don't even get to attend the funeral of your passing family members because you're out. Because of his commitment to his faith. Now, I can also tell you that commitment to his faith drives his business, drives his relationships, drives his financial investments, drives the way that he behaves with his children and his grandchildren and his business partners and the people around him. And if you knew him, if you knew his name, you would know that to be true. It's impossible to miss. And because I know some of his children, I can tell you that core belief system is deep in them as well. And the grandkids of his that I know, true for them as well. When that value system, that one pillar gets all the way down to the core, to the place where it's not going to rock, it's not going to change, it's not going to shift, now you can start not only building on it, but building adjacent to it. See, you know what I didn't see on the beach? I didn't see any one of those houses with only one stick holding it up. I didn't. Most of them had 4, at minimum, major corner pillars, driven way down deep. The 4 walls of a house. We just, I didn't have anything to do with it, just remodeled the local little church where we gather on Sundays. And my wife and I were standing there looking at one particular wall, and we're thinking, that's an odd place for that wall. I mean, after all the shifting and moving, why is that wall there? And I conjectured, well, probably because if you look at the way the building is constructed, that was once an exterior wall, which means as they added on and added the upstairs, et cetera, it's not just a wall that was there to put a door in, it's a load-bearing wall. You can't move or remove that wall without a whole lot of work. I mean, you could probably take it out and put a couple of steel columns or concrete columns or rock columns in the places where that wall is now and open that space up. But to leave the wall there as an exterior wall at one time and a load-bearing wall for the second floor, if you move that, it's coming down. That's not a good idea. But how many places in your life are built the same way? How many load-bearing walls do you have in your belief system, in your business relationships, in your encounters, in your brand, in your corporate culture? You've got a load-bearing wall, and you're the only one that knows it's load-bearing. I mean, somebody may come in and go, we're just going to take that out. Think back to the last couple of messages. In fact, I encourage you strongly to go back and watch the last 5 or 6 messages from Leading Leaders podcast. And you're going to find we talked about some of those companies whose brand and culture got away from them. Outsiders came in who had a different brand view. They had a different corporate culture view. They had a different way of seeing the world, and they were loud, and they were obnoxious, and they were willing to fight in your company against what you believe. And because they don't know or care where the load-bearing walls are, they don't plan to stay around that long. It's like releasing a tornado in your house. It's just confined in your house. You can destroy everything and then leave because it doesn't care. There are people whose motivation is to get the attention. They're clowns on a unicycle. All they want to do is get attention. And they don't care what it costs you. They don't care at all. They'll come in and tear down the load-bearing walls. They don't know what the foundation is that you're built on. They just want to wreak havoc to get attention. I recently listened to a guy say, and he said this very clearly, he said, if you're here to be an agitator because you disagree with who we are. Now, obviously, he'd already reached the point where those things were happening or he wouldn't have brought it up. But he said, if you're here to be an agitator, to get your 60 seconds of fame, good luck. I know the old phrase says 15 minutes of fame. You're not going to get 15 minutes here because our security team and our camera team are really good. Okay, you should know that. If you plan to come here to disrupt, to tear down my load-bearing walls, to challenge the core values, to challenge our principles, to alter the direction of our brand, to cost us billions of dollars because you have a new idea and you want to prove yourself worthy. I want you to understand this isn't just about your core values of faith. It could be about your core values of family. What is a family? Now that's a whole ball of wax, right? I mean, that's like stabbing a spider's nest. Thousands of little ideas come out. What is a family? Let me ask you this. If family wasn't such a big deal, why has it been under attack? When they stopped the draft and then approved getting rid of children because they're inconvenient. And then within just months of that also said, oh, and by the way, you know, this whole women at home, men in the workforce thing, this is nonsense. We need to have as many women in the workforce. Look, there are those who financially benefited from that, and there are those who relationally and emotionally were destroyed and devastated by that. And those two decisions coming back to back were not on accident. They were like a tornado in your house tearing down load-bearing walls. Look at the poverty level. Look at the crime rates in the places where men are gone from the home, and so are women. So who's raising the kids? I am not just of the opinion, I am of a deeply held conviction that families include a father and a mother, that one is the most compassionate and one is the most disciplinarian, that both have a purpose and a function in the household, and they serve that purpose together. I am of a firm conviction, not just an opinion, that there's a right way to raise a family. I didn't have the benefit of that when I was young. I paid a lot of consequential prices for that. I'm watching my children now raising their kids thinking, I hope that they've taken some of the things that my wife and I, almost 32 years together, have instilled in them, have challenged them to. But just yesterday, in a public place, I saw the behavior of one of my kids and I corrected it. And I said, don't do it like that. Why? Because it's an ever-changing understanding. It's a deep conviction. It's a deeply held belief. Do I have opinions about family that are open for conversation and concession? Absolutely. Do I have opinions that maybe were ill-formed? Absolutely. Am I willing to change those in my life? Absolutely. But one of the 4 pillars of my life that I will not allow to be removed is that I believe family is the strongest thing keeping our nation together. And every little spider web that dismantles family challenges that core belief. Now, I also believe that family, together with faith, those two become a very powerful braided cord. They become 2 very powerful pillars to hold together our culture, our society, the fabric of our nation. Now, the next one of those is freedom. And I don't just mean freedom from the government, although that's a huge part of it. Freedom from tyranny, absolutely a huge part of it. I mean freedom from addiction, freedom from acting like an idiot, freedom from being overruled by your own self-ambitions. The freedom, you ready for this? This sounds bizarre. The freedom of self-control. Because someone with no self-control and no inhibitions is a very dangerous someone. Someone who cannot control their emotions is not free. Free to behave however I want to. No, no, no. Freedom means constrained by something. There are boundaries, there are limitations to freedom. My freedom to swing my arms about ends at your nose. If I want to stand in the middle of a room and just flail around with my arms, I am free to do that until one of my flailing phalanges lands on the end of your nose, and then it becomes battery. There are laws against that. See, your freedom to behave however you want to ends in your own personal confined space, and anyone who wants to be in that space with you while you're behaving that way. But that freedom is the freedom to live within the constraints of self-control and laws that protect everyone else. My freedom to behave however I want to doesn't include the freedom to treat others poorly. My freedom to make financial decisions for myself and not have them made for me by the government or a boss or a neighbor, that's my freedom. The free enterprise system, what we call capitalism in most of the world, is the single most powerful economic structure to give that. Is it messed up? Yeah, in some places. Does it allow room for corruption? Yeah, it does. Just like flailing around your arms leaves room for somebody getting smacked in the face. If everybody walked around doing that, there would be a lot of people smacked in the face. If everybody walked around with the complete freedom to build, start, grow a business any way they want to, there would be a lot of mistakes. There would be a lot of corruption. And you know what? It would still be based on freedom, rather than being told how much you can have. I sat at a table and watched a grown man cry over the amount of beef in his beef stew. And I said, dude, you can always go back to the kitchen and ask for another bowl. He said, you don't understand. What I'm crying about is that the amount of beef in this single serving of stew for me is more than my government will allow for my family at Thanksgiving. What? Yeah. The government of his nation restricts the amount of protein intake for the entire household. And the amount of protein in the bowl in front of him for lunch, the single bowl, was more protein than his family was allowed for a holiday meal. That is not freedom. That's control. I'm willing to stand up, to speak up, to put some things on the line for freedom, for my freedom, for other people's freedom, to speak out just like this in the platform opportunities that I have. Yep, some of them have already cut me off today. Surprise. But to be available to speak. I'm glad to do that. I'm honored to do that. I'm honored to be called and equipped and empowered to do that. And I will, because it is my calling, my purpose on this earth, empower and equip others to stand up and speak up for the freedom, not only of themselves, but other people. But you better ask yourself this question: what is it that I want to be free to do? And now you have to ask, how does it fit with the other pillars of my life? Does my freedom conflict with my faith convictions? Does my freedom conflict with my family? See, there was a time that I was an addict, about 2.5 decades. And my freedom to be an addict, to act like an idiot because I was an addict, that freedom should have stopped, should have been constrained by my faith, should have been constrained by the impact that it had on my family. But because I was selfish, because I was immature, because I was driven by my own what I want, not by self-control, my freedom hurt a lot of other people. You're free to roam about the country. You're free to act anywhere you want to, but you also must understand freedom demands risk. Freedom comes with consequences, and freedom is never free. It's going to cost you something. And it probably has already cost other people a lot. Now, I just gave you just three of the core values that are the pillars in my life. And I'm going to challenge you to sit down and kind of write out your own manifesto. If you're watching this on any of the social media channels, in the description below, I've kind of gone into a little more detail in those three pillars of my life. Those are not the only ones, but those are the first and primary ones. If I only had 3 giant concrete posts or telephone poles to start building my pillars with, that's where I would start. I believe a well-constructed stilt house probably has 10 or 12. How many do you have? How many pillars have you put in your life? How many things do you have that you believe go all the way to the bedrock of your belief? It informs every decision. It becomes the load-bearing walls of your life. If somebody else were to come in and say, oh, I just want to rearrange this. I'm going to change the brand. I'm going to change the customer. I'm going to change the way we message to our audience. I'm going to change the products that we offer or the services that we offer to our audience. As a corporate leader, that's your job. Your job is to establish those core values, those pillars, to be able to put something in the ground and go, yeah, we can do all of the things you're talking about except that one. That one violates other core principles. We're not going there. If you haven't noticed, even in the world of artificial intelligence, there are core boundaries, core principles, core ideas that are not meant to be violated. And yet we find that the free will of an autonomous robot will take sides with another robot over a human in an instant. It will violate the core principles and the code that was written into it. Think I'm crazy? Look it up. What are the foundational cores that drive you? What are the things that make you make the decisions that are going to change your life or the lives of people that you care about? Employees, customers, family. And if there's really nothing telling you that, please take time to reevaluate that. In the words of Stitch, at the end of Lilo and Stitch, getting on the ship to go home, he turned to his captors and he said, "Can I at least say goodbye to my family?" And the woman in charge said, "Your what?" He said, "My family, Ohana." She said, "What is that?" He said, "Well, this is my family. It's small and it's broken, but it's good." Even if you have a small family, and even if it's full of humans who are not perfect, your family is still a good source of core values. Prioritize them. Stick with them. Don't do things that violate or destroy them. And you got your first core value. It's a good place to start. I'm J. Loren Norris with Leading Leaders Podcast for Tell It Like It Is TV and Story Power Academy. Have a blessed day.
Hey, real quick here, I want to remind you of the Kingdom Cohort. If you're not already involved in the Kingdom Cohort, get signed up now. You're going to go through 6 weeks of story power training to learn how to master your stories. You're going to go through 6 weeks of attitude hack training, which will teach you how, whether it's corporate environment, in your church, or in your family, to build leadership, brand, and culture. Then you're going to go through Lead the Narrative to help you identify the false ideas that are out there that are damaging our society, our brand, and our culture. Not only to identify them, but also to counter them. If that sounds like a great challenge for you, I want you to jump in to the Narrative Warrior Kingdom Cohort. Do it now.
Subscribe now for access to our extensive media library of leadership lessons promoting faith, family, and freedom. Begin your personal growth plan at storypoweracademy.com for leadership development and communication.